In the 1950s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner ran an experiment that found something strange about reward. He gave one group food every time they pressed a lever. Simple, reliable, guaranteed. He gave a second group food at completely random intervals, sometimes after one press, sometimes after 40. The second group didn't just keep pressing the lever. They became obsessed with it. They pressed harder, longer, and kept pressing well after the food stopped coming entirely. You've probably felt this about a person. The one who texted you constantly for 3 days and then went quiet for a week. The one who was warm when it suited them and cold when it didn't. The one you could not stop thinking about for reasons that had very little to do with how good they actually were for you. This isn't going to tell you who to date. But by the end, that particular kind of obsession might make a lot more sense. And there's a real question worth asking the next time it shows up. Psychologists have a name for what Skinner found: intermittent reinforcement. It is the single most powerful pattern of behavioral conditioning ever documented. Stronger than reliable reward. Stronger than punishment. Think about a slot machine. It does not pay out every time. That inconsistency is not a design flaw. It is the entire design. Casinos have understood this since long before psychologists gave it a name. Unpredictable reward keeps a person pulling the lever long after a guaranteed reward would have made them walk away bored. Now hold that and think about the last person who consumed your attention completely. Not the one who was kind and steady and there when they said they'd be there. The other one. Because the brain does not actually distinguish between a lever and a phone. Inconsistent affection activates the identical mechanism a slot machine does. It's not that the unpredictable person is more compatible with you. It's that your brain has classified them as a variable reward lever, and it will not stop pulling until either the reward becomes reliable or you walk away entirely. You've watched this happen, maybe in your own life, maybe in a friend's. There's the guy who gets 3 enthusiastic texts a day for a week straight, full conversations, plans being made, and then 4 days of nothing. It's not like there was argument or a breakup. Just silence. And he checks his phone in that silence more than he ever smiled during the good days. There's the woman who is warm and affectionate the moment they're alone together, and distant and strange the second other people are around. And she spends every social gathering quietly trying to figure out what she did wrong, running the entire encounter for a version of him that barely showed up. There's the friend who describes an ex from 4 years ago in more detail than his actual current partner, who is kind, consistent, and in his own words, kind of boring. He knows which one is better for him. He cannot explain why he thinks about the other one more. And there's the version of this that never even becomes a relationship. The person who likes your posts at 2 a.m. and doesn't reply to your texts for 3 days. And somehow it is that person, not the one who consistently checks in on you, who you cannot stop thinking about. The cost isn't just wasted time, though there's plenty of that. It's mistaking a racing heart for chemistry, when a racing heart is just as often your nervous system on alert. The body cannot always tell the difference between excitement and anxiety. So a relationship that keeps you a little bit afraid gets misfiled as passionate. It's staying in something that is objectively bad for you. Because leaving doesn't feel like relief. It feels like withdrawal, in the literal clinical sense of the word. The lever stops paying out, and your whole system screams that something is wrong, even when the truth is that something finally stopped being wrong. Here's the costly part of this whole thing. While you are spending your attention on someone who is on and off, a person who is actually consistent for you rarely gets a fair chance. Not because you don't want good things, because a nervous system trained on unpredictability has learned to read steadiness as absence of feeling. Reliable can start to look like nothing is happening at all, purely because nothing is happening to your alarm system. So, where does a nervous system learn to prefer this? Usually early, and usually the same way most of these patterns start. As a response to something that was, at the time, actually true. For example, a house where affection was warm sometimes and distant other times teaches a child that love is something you have to stay alert for, something you earn in random moments, something that requires you to watch closely because it might not be there in an hour. That system worked in its way. It kept a child emotionally engaged with a caregiver who couldn't always be counted on. The problem is that the nervous system holds on to that pattern, even into adulthood. It just keeps recognizing the same pattern in adulthood and calling it love, because it's the only version of love it was ever taught to look for. You don't need to diagnose your whole childhood to use this. There's a simpler question worth asking the next time someone has your full attention and you can't work out why. First, notice the feeling in your body, not just the story in your head. If your attention on this person spikes specifically during the uncertain periods, the silences, the mixed signals, that's a strong sign you're responding to unpredictability itself, not to them specifically. Second, ask the question directly, out loud, if you can stand to, am I drawn to this person, or to not knowing whether they'll come back? Those two feelings sit right next to each other in the body, and they're not the same thing, even though they feel almost identical in the moment. Third, and this one is harder, pay attention to how a calm, reliable person actually makes you feel. If steady interest reads to you as boring, that's not necessarily information about them. It might be information about what your nervous system has been trained to mistake for love. Boring, for a lot of people, is simply what safety feels like the first few times they experience it. So, tell me in the comments, has a calm, reliable person ever felt boring to you? At least at first. That's usually worth sitting with. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this helpful. Kindly like and subscribe to see more of this. Thank you. Until next time. Cheers.